Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stretch Professor, and today I just want to go over real quickly the patch 11.3 preview. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Starts around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights. Usually goes till about 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. And then we do fresh patch notes and tier lists for each patch, and we're constantly adding in more champion guides and topical guides like how to one-trick, or like best one tricks, how to micro better, how to macro better, what is dodging, does luck exist in League of Legends, and dozens of other videos. So go by, check all those out. And let's go ahead and get in here. So as always, this is a direct tweet from Mark Yetter, who is the head designer of League of Legends, and he has, over the last few months or so, been tweeting out about a week before the patch what's going to be on the patch, and this has been extremely accurate. There have been a couple of places where it's been slightly different. This is very accurate though, so this is what I've been using for my patch previews over Surrender at 20, which is really just looking at what's actually on the PBE right now, but some of these things that Yetter mentions may not be on the PBE yet, so that's why I trust him as sort of the reliable source for this. Let's go ahead and walk through these. He has most of the numbers here for the items. He doesn't have the champion changes. I assume he's going to release an updated tweet with the champion changes maybe in 2 or 3 days, and I'll send you an updated video about it as well. Let's go ahead and get through here. Okay, so item and rune nerfs. So Dead Man's Plate is losing 75 health, which is roughly the equivalent of like maybe 225 or so gold. I think that's okay in general. There's not that many champions that are abusing Dead Man's. This would be bad for Bard, because the most popular Bard build has been lock it into Dead Man's, or at least the most powerful one has been lock it into Dead Man's. Darius has been getting this more often, so that allows him to stick to people a little bit better. So I think just some more of those bruiser type of champions are getting the Dead Man's. I personally don't feel like this item was that problematic to begin with. You were paying a very steep price for that movement speed because they already nerfed the armor a ton. Back in Season 10, it had 80 armor, and now it only has 40. And they did give it a bit more health, but you were still losing a lot of survivability in exchange for having that baseline movement speed on it. So I guess they wanted to keep the movement speed, but nerf the health on it. So I think it's still pretty niche. Maybe like Hecarim was getting this as well. Maybe Olaf got it eventually. I'm not really sure. I feel like those champs really didn't get it that often, though. So I don't know. Obviously, they have better stats than I do, but that one was a bit of a head scratcher. It seems kind of niche, and like it really wasn't that much of a problem. But like Bard's not taking over the meta. Darius is good, but there are other items he can get also. So I don't know. Staff of Flowing Water, so they are knocking 10 AP off of this. This is fair. Staff of Flowing Water is an extremely powerful item, and it has been, ever since this item was previewed last September or something, I said this is a super powerful item. And I know LS has been all over this, really trying to push people to get Staff of Flowing Water and Moonstone. It is a little overrated. It's very good on enchanters when you get it, but on some non-enchanter things out there, the win rate is significantly lower. So like on Lilia, getting Moonstone is like a 7% lower win rate than getting Leandri's. But they are not nerfing Moonstone, apparently, on here. They're only nerfing Staff of Flowing Water. So I don't think this is going to change that much. You are losing some item efficiency, but they're not touching the buff itself. So it's still going to give out the 15% movement speed. It's still going to give out like the 30 AP on it. And that's really what matters, the 1,000 gold or so buff that you give to all of your allies that trigger this. So I think that it should be less. It could even be less than this, but I think this is a good place to start. Now, I wish that they would put ability haste on it, even if they had to knock off some of the other stuff. That's one of my big complaints, is that Forbidden Idol just feels terrible with no ability haste. But they did buff Ionians, which does help out with that a little bit a couple of patches ago. So anyways, fair nerf. It's a super strong item, and a lot of enchanters, especially people like Seraphine, are becoming a bit more popular in the bot lane. You're even seeing them in pro. Like I saw some games with like Lulu and Janna and stuff like that recently. So if you start to see them in pro, then they are going to be on the strong side. And then Zhonya's Hourglass Seekers is going to cost an extra 100 gold. Now, I know this is an item that you know, AD champions complain about nonstop, you know, because it's one of the few things that, you know, mages can get against stuff like Zed, like, you know, Talon, Irelia, all that kind of stuff. So especially mid lane ADCs or AD champions really don't like Seekers. So that's interesting. They're increasing the baseline cost by 100 and the total cost by 100. So that's pretty significant early on, paying an extra 100 gold for that Seekers, because they did nerf, I believe, the armor on it a few patches ago as well. So this is going to make those AD mids become just a little bit more viable. So, okay, I guess that's fine. I don't play the types of champs that have to play against Seekers a lot, so I don't know how frustrating that item can be. I feel like if they're going to do that, I mean, I guess honestly nobody goes the Hextech item or whatever, the orange blade that gives you the spell shield that goes into Maw Malmortius. I'm blanking out on the name. But that was such an annoying item for years and years and years as a mage into a bruiser like an Irelia or whatever when I would play Mage's Top sometimes way back in the day. That item was so annoying. But it was so cost efficient. And like the old school Wit's End was super annoying. So anyways, whatever. I think that's fine. The fact that like Zhonya's is already a pretty strong item, especially at higher elo brackets against those types of champs, and it has really good armor on it, maybe it's just too much. So anyways, alright, fair. Iron Spike Whip removed. Minions and monsters take double damage that are below 50%. Now I think this is where you activate it, and I think that's what Gore Drinker builds into. So that's gonna hurt wave clear a little bit. Good, Gore Drinker's too strong. And then Gore Drinker itself, the active heal is going to 8% of missing health. That is a big, big nerf on that item. They changed it a couple of patches ago to make it where it was stronger. Maybe it was even last patch, where it was stronger against single target but weaker in like multi-target situations. But it still just heals somebody basically up to full whenever you activate it, if there's like 3 people around. So I really like this change. That's going to cut the healing by like 30% on this item, at least on the active portion. So I think that's a good move. The champs that use this item in every role, they're pretty strong. Like Renekton is dominant top in pro play. Darius is very good in solo queue, although he doesn't even get Gore Drinker most of the time. He gets Stride Breaker. And then of course you have like Red Kayn being pretty strong, Olaf being pretty strong. A lot of champs are getting the Gore Drinker, so that's good. And then Ravenous Hydra is that's getting hit pretty hard, going from 15% Omnivamp to 8 to 16% by champion level. So late game, if you get this like third item, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. But if you get the second item, it'll probably be like 12%. So a little bit of a nerf to it. I still think it'll be okay as a second item for champions like who gets this, like Camille, Fiora, you know, several of the kind of these double lifesteal champs. So that's good. And then Steric's Gauge is losing 100 shield, which is a nice start. They are not nerfing the scaling on it, where it's still 100% of your bonus health, which is a lot. But this shield, usually people get its second item after Gore Drinker, and so you're probably looking at like having 500 bonus health or so. And I think it's only a shield for your bonus health. So this is probably, and then you're losing 100 off of the Steric's Gauge. So this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 15 to 20% nerf on that shield in kind of the early mid game. And then the shield duration is going from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. It shouldn't even be that long. It should be like 3 seconds or something like that. If enchanters can't have 5-second shields, why does Darius get a 5-second shield? You know, or Olaf or whatever. Like, that's just ridiculous. Then it doesn't even decay, and it gives you lots of really good stats to go with it. So I'm glad they're nerfing it somewhat. So that seems okay. So I really like these changes. This is all part of the lifesteal package that has just been terrorizing solo queue for a long time. Pretty much for the entire preseason, so I like those changes. I don't think it's going to completely gut any of these champions. Most of them have alternative builds they can get also, but I think that's certainly going to help out. Okay, item buffs. Force of Nature, honestly forgot this item even exists. Like, nobody gets this item. The speed up is going to this, so I still don't think there's going to be a lot of people that want this. Magic resist in general is something that just a lot of people just don't get it. They just get away without the magic resist because they have stuff like all of that lifesteal and Sterix, which pretty much stops a lot of burst damage. So most people just haven't even been getting magic resist items. Maybe Spirit Visage because it complements all of the healing and shielding items. But yeah, Spirit Visage is still going to be the go-to. Force of Nature, it's just a really weird combination of items. Maybe on, like, Singed or something, someone who really wants that movement speed. I mean, I guess, like, Darius, it could be good, too, in some situations, but I feel like anyone who's going to have the lifesteal stuff is just going to want Spirit Visage. Or if you have, like, Enchanters on your team or something like that, they're just going to want Spirit Visage. So I just think no one's going to get that item. Now, Frozen Heart, this is really big, and this is something I've been calling for a really, really long time. For like years, I've been saying they should make this into a support style item because big tanks are just not going to get this item the vast majority of the time. Outside of like Gnosis, because he really wants the cooldown reduction so he can stack his Q faster and he really needs the mana and stuff like that. Like there are a couple of edge cases. But for the most part, like, nobody gets Frozen Heart this day and age. It's a really old-school item that's just outdated. So they are bringing the cost down 200, and they're lowering it the equivalency of armor. But this is going to make it a lot more approachable for tanks. And I think that there will be more tanks in the bot lane supports that consider this item. Like a Leona especially, I could see this being good on her because she does kind of run out of mana pretty quickly. Especially if you don't have biscuits. Like, I feel like I have to take biscuits on Leona or I'm going to go because in the mid game, you're only going to have like 450 or 500 mana, and your stuff goes down to such a low cooldown off of all the new CDR items that you just, in like longer fights, you just run out of mana. So like that 400 mana that used to be like too much mana is now actually potentially kind of useful. And especially since there's no presence of mind anymore to give you that free 500 mana that you used to be able to get and then take the Tenacity Rune as the secondary. That isn't an option anymore. So I like this change. And Frozen Heart, I think it's still going to be really solid. Or it's going to move up a lot more than it had been. It does not have health on it, which is kind of a big deal. But it does have the damage reduction on it now, which a lot of people forget about. So I think that's 5 per 1,000 health. I'll just pull it up here real quick. Let me see. So these are the stats right now before they change it. And 2,700 is just too much for support tanks unless it's like an extremely good item like Aegis pre-nerf or something like that. But 2,500 will only make it 100 more than Zeke's. And you get the rock solid on it, so damage is reduced by 5 per 1,000. And this is post-mitigation damage. So this is after armor has already been calculated and everything. And I think on Leona in particular, this could be is reduced by 5. Maximum of 40. But it's okay, so it's a flat amount of reduction, not a percentage. But I guess it's a 40% reduction each. But anyway, so any instance of damage is going to be reduced by at least like 10 by the time you get this item. So it doesn't have the HP on it, which is kind of problematic, but it's going to be a premier armor item. So if they are mostly an armor team, this could be potentially pretty good. It has the same ability haste as Zeke's does now. More mana, more armor, and it's got the rock solid passive and the 15% attack speed cripple. So if they have multiple attack speed champs, if they have a lot of AD, I think this could potentially be pretty decent. We'll see. I've been a little disappointed. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been a little disappointed with the Zeke's damage lately. It just feels like every time I look at it, it's like under 1,000 damage contributed from that Zeke's in a lot of situations because it only buffs one person, and it's like a pretty good on-hit amount of damage, but it's fights. People just get blown up so fast from abilities that it just feels like it doesn't do that much. But now this is going to be 100%. It already is 100% cost efficient. And Zeke's is only like 85%. So the stats on this are better overall. It just costs too much. So I think it'll be good. And if you think about this, like this works really well with Leona's W also, because the W is going to reduce the damage by a flat amount. Now, I think that's pre-mitigation. I can't remember. But it's going to reduce it by a flat, like, 15, damage. And then this is going to reduce it further by another 10. And there's so many little chip damage things in the game, just little small incremental damage, right? Where you're getting Leandry burned, you're getting burned by, it's not going to affect Ignite, but like Leandry, Scorch, Airy, Comet, Demonic Embrace, just little, just auto attacks from like, supports and things like that. So there's just a lot of stuff that's going to end up doing like a pretty small amount of tick damage, like 50 or less damage after mitigation. And, if you take off 10 on that, that's a lot less damage. So because this, like, it's just going to basically crush dot damage. Anything that's doing dots to you that's not true damage is going to get like a huge reduction off of this. So it actually can be pretty good against a lot of magic type of champions, even though it doesn't have magic resist on it. So I really like that change. I think that will make it a competitive item. I'm not saying you're going to get it every time, but there are definitely some situations where you might get it once they change that. Then they're changing Chemtech Purifier here. I'm really starting to dig this item a lot more. I was really kind of negative on it before because, I was just thinking, who's going to get this over Morellonomicon? Yeah, it is a little bit cheaper, but the fact that it does have the mana regen on it, I've been getting it on Maokai quite a bit. The mana regen actually is relevant for a lot of champions that want to spam spells, and the ability haste is actually quite nice as well, especially if you want to get this and then get something like Staff of Flowing Water on some champs. The staff doesn't have any ability haste on it, so the fact this does have ability haste on it is really handy. So you are losing 20 AP off of not getting Morellos, and you're losing the, 200 health. So that definitely is relevant, but the ability haste and the mana regen is certainly not terrible. It just depends on really how much you need that health on, like, Maokai and some of these other champions out there. If you're afraid you're going to get dove or blown up, you might need to opt for the Morello. But if not, then the Chemtech can be good. Now, they are changing it. They're giving it 5 more ability haste, which is great. Currently, you're paying about 300 gold in order to get to 100%. So for the extra Grievous Wounds portion, you're paying 300 gold. So on Oblivion Orb, you're paying about 200 gold in order to get the Grievous Wounds. And if you upgrade all the way up to Chemtech, you're paying the same. It's like 200 or 300, pretty close for the Grievous Wounds, but you have the upgrade portion as well to the 60%. But right now you have to CC someone, like hard crowd control them in order to get the 60% for 3 seconds. They're changing it now to where if you heal or shield an ally, it will cause their next damage, their next, it says damage, I don't know if that's auto attack or spells, but the next damage they do to increase Grievous Wounds for 3 seconds. And this is actually a really, really big change for enchanters. So stuff like Janna, who really doesn't have a lot of hard CC, right? Like, she can ult and the displacement counts, or like if she hits somebody with a tornado, but sometimes you just can't get up close enough, right? You don't want to get close to that Olaf. I mean, you can't even hard CC the Olaf when he has his ult going, but like maybe the Darius, you don't want to get close enough to try to hit him with a, a fast cast tornado. Maybe. Like, there are just a lot of edge cases where it's just too dangerous to position to have that happen, or maybe you don't want to use your hard CC on the person. So maybe you're playing as Lulu or something like that, and you want to buff your AD carry with your W. You don't want to have to polymorph somebody. So I think that this is just consistently going to be better, and if you take Font of Life, which a lot of enchanters are going to do, I think it's sort of, everyone's going for Guardian Font now instead of Airy, just because the sorcery tree is a little underwhelming, I think, these days. But if you take Font, that's going to be very nice. You're probably going to be getting Font anyways, because it helps out with your Staff of Flowing Water or your Ardent Censer a ton, because the healing that comes off of Font, I say this all the time, but people just never know this, who aren't regulars of the channel. Whenever you put that Font debuff on someone by slowing them, then whenever your ally attacks, it counts as a heal from you. It's not lifesteal on them, it is a heal from you. So that triggers Staff of Flowing Water, that triggers Ardent Censer, and now that's going to trigger Chemtech Purifier. as well. So, for example, if you have Font of Flowing Life and you are Janna and you W somebody, you put the slow on them, it's going to put that debuff over your head. Your entire team auto attacks them once. They all get Staff of Flowing Water buffs. They all get the Chemtech Purifier buff on their next auto attacks or whatever. So that means that you can pretty much have them purified the entire time, like in a big fight. Then it's just like super, super strong, especially on someone like Nami, where the slow off of Nami's E triggers Font. And that triggers Staff of Flowing Water and Purifier and all that stuff. So there are a lot of combinations where this change is going to be a really, really big deal. It's going to be very handy. And even on Maokai, like, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, you do have a lot of CC to trigger it in its current form, but if you just take Font of Life, you have so many slows and CCs also that you're basically going to perma purify them as well. So, anyway, super, super strong. I like the change, and the 5 extra ability haste is very nice too. It's like 135 gold worth of value. So now you're probably paying less than 200 gold in order to get the Purifier buff, which is going to be much, much better. So this is awesome, and Grievous Wounds is so important right now. Now, after these changes, maybe people go away from the Gore Drinker and all that stuff, but I don't think so. I think there's still going to be an excessive amount of healing in the game, even after these changes. So I still think that a lot of times you're going to want a Grievous Wound somewhere in your build, like second or third item at the absolute latest. This is going to make the Purifier a lot better, so I really like that change. Okay, Immortal Shield Bow is getting 10 extra attack damage, wow, just for free, and 20% extra attack speed. That's actually really big for a lot of AD carries. So obviously Samira, that's going to be huge for her because she gets so much benefit off of lifesteal with her ult. So she just always gets Shield Bow. And this could help out someone like Jhin or just really a ton of different ADCs that are scared of assassins. Because right now, Shield Bow, its stats are just so low that just almost nobody gets it except for Samira. Maybe Draven. But a lot of people are just going to get the, one of the other ones. Probably still Gale Force even after the nerfs. But Kraken Slayer is pretty popular as well. But anyways, this is going to make it much less of a stat fall off because I think Kraken has like 65 AD, so it's not even like the Kraken passive, it's just like straight up it has more attack damage and sometimes more attack speed, so you would just get it, right? But now Shield Bow, I think this is going to make it a very similar amount of attack damage and attack speed, so this is going to be bad news for assassins and good news for AD carries into assassins. Okay, which I like to see as a bot laner. And then, sorry, I thought I turned this crap off. Let me just, there we go. Phantom Dancer, this is weird. Like, they're giving it 20 attack damage. It's losing 20 attack speed, which is cost positive. The attack damage is worth more than attack speed. Longsword replacing the dagger in the build, and then the max stacks to get bonus attack speed is going to 3. Okay. Then the bonus attack speed at max stacks is going to 30%. Okay, so basically it comes online faster, so when you get 3 attacks, then you get a bonus 30% attack speed. I think this is good. Well, this is trying to really like make the hard sell to someone like Vayne, or just like where 3 attacks matters a lot. Like people who have the Vayne doesn't even get it, but like the Hail of Blades people like Tristana, Kai'Sa, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe this makes it a little bit more competitive than something like a Hurricane on Kai'Sa. I'm not sure. It's a weird change. So we'll see. But I think that ultimately that's good because you're going to come online and start doing like that bonus damage faster in fights, which ultimately I think will be a good thing. I'm just not sure like who exactly is really going to want this over some of the other options, but maybe Vayne. Lord Dominic's armor penetration 35%. Wow, that's a huge bump. I thought Lord Dom's was already pretty good. I guess a lot of people are getting Mortal Reminder instead. That's big. That's going to be really good against tanks, especially as maybe a 3rd or 4th item on 80 carries. So that's pretty big. Verdant Barrier now costs 1,000. So mages against other mages, that's going to be stronger. And then Banshee's Veil, this is huge. It's a very, very big buff for mages. Like, only 100 extra gold and you get 15 ability power. 15 ability power is the equivalent of like it's like 300. It's like over 300 gold because 22 per ability power. So that's like 330 gold worth of value for only 100. That's a very, very big deal. So that's gonna make a lot of like your hard engaged champs like much worse. That's gonna be very annoying for stuff like Leona. Bard is, I really, really hate these bubbles as Bard. You know, if their Syndra mid lane's gonna have Banshees or just whatever, their mid laner, their Orianna is gonna have Banshees. That's so obnoxious to deal with as an engaged champion. So yeah, that's bad news. That's real bad news. Now, like, Rakan can work around it, sort of, because you knock it off with your W. I guess you could even hit him with a Q while you're trying to run in. But it's annoying. Even like Maokai seeds and stuff, they get a free seed walkthrough every however long, 45 seconds. And if you take like item haste stuff, so if you take like Cosmic Insight, which a lot of mid laners aren't going to do that, if you have stuff like that or Ingenious Hunter or whatever, don't forget that does lower the cooldown on the reactivation on this thing too. So that's good. That could also help enchanters out a little bit. I don't think they're going to get it a lot of the time, but if you were just like really scared of that engage from the Bard or a Blitzcrank or something, in theory you could get this on like a Seraphine, but probably not. It'll probably be for mid laners, but that's really strong. Like, you're basically not giving up that much damage now in order to get that, and it has a lot of magic resist on it too. So that's a huge buff. Then Horizon Focus, just 15 extra ability power, which is very nice. So now you're only paying something like 500 gold for the passive, and you do all that extra damage off of the Hyper Shot. So obviously this is super good on Zoe. Couple of other instances where this could be good, maybe on dot champs. So I'm thinking like Maokai with his seeds actually has a pretty high win rate. But I don't know if this is going to do more than Demonic Embrace, but you get the initial application with the seed, and I think it does like 1/3 of the damage, and then the next 2/3 of the damage would be amplified by the 10%. The seeds don't have great AP ratios though, so I mean, obviously, like, it's obviously going to be good on like your Vel'Kozes, your Xeraths, and some of that off-meta stuff, maybe Lux, from really far away, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird item, but they are definitely pushing the envelope with it now, with that change. And the Silvermare Dawn, we're not sure what that's going to do yet. I believe that's like the Bruiser Quicksilver Sash item. So we'll see. Jury's out on what that one is. Check back in a couple of days if he sends out some more details. Okay, so they're nerfing some Omnivamp stuff. So Leeching Leer is going to 5% Spell Vamp, or Omnivamp. It's giving you 100 extra HP. And then Rift Maker is going 8 to 16 per champ level. So if you rush this, it's probably only going to be like 10%. That's a pretty big nerf. You got to remember, it used to be 20%. And it's getting 100 health, which is not... I don't think that's worth. I think that the Omnivamp itself is much more valuable than flat health, I believe. I'm not 100%, but I believe in a lot of circumstances it's going to be. And then Eclipse is getting nerfed as well. So 5 to 10% based on champ level. So if you rush this, it's going to be like 7% probably. A lot of champs don't even get it, Eclipse anymore. I mean, like, sometimes Misfortune, sometimes Jin, but yeah, that's a pretty big nerf. Now the shield is a little bit bigger, I believe, but for range champs, it's only going to be 15 extra shield. So it's definitely a nerf on those champs. Okay. Alright, so champion nerfs. Now, we don't know what these are. Once again, check back in a couple of days once they give us these total numbers. But in general, this list looks pretty good. Olaf is still just way too strong. Now, keep in mind, they are nerfing like 2 of Olaf's items as well. So this could be a really significant hit to Olaf if they nerf him directly on top of that, because he does do Gore Drinker and he does do Sterix. So those are already getting hit pretty hard. The Purifier is like low-key going to be a pretty big nerf to him too, if people are smart and get it. Now, a lot of people are not going to get it, but like if enchanters start getting Purifier, because you were immune to CC, which means the previous Purifier couldn't do anything to you, but now it's going to do that extra 60% anti-healing. So that could be a big deal in some matchups if people get that item. Now, a lot of people are just going to like rush Moonstone plus Staff of Flowing Water because LS tells them to get that. But if they decide to go Purifier second, or at least, I guess the Oblivion Orb will be about the same, but either way, there are definitely multiple ways that Olaf's getting nerfed on this patch. So hopefully they don't hit him too hard, although I'll be honest with you, he's an extremely frustrating champ when he's in the game. Like, it feels like there's no counterplay to him in the early game if he's super fed. So I just think his design is really problematic. Like, you're just never going to have a fair champion. Either he's going to be like, or a balanced champion, I should say. Either he's going to be like complete garbage, or he's just going to completely run away with it. And that's just the nature of stuff that can't be CC'd. Okay, Cho'Gath's getting nerfed, which seems a little weird to me because I hardly ever see him in games, but his win rate is extremely high right now, so I could not figure out what was up with that, but he's got like a 57% win rate in top, so I guess just hitting him a little bit is fine, but I just never see him in solo queue, and I haven't seen him in pro. But okay, Pantheon's getting nerfed. A lot of people still hate this champ. He is banned all the time in pro. So there's something going on there. I personally don't mind playing against him too much. He's pretty annoying if he's in the bot lane, as he forces you to take like extra armor runes, and depending on who your ADC locks, if they just like, blind pick Vayne or something, the lane is pretty much over. If they pick Pantheon plus something aggressive like Jin or Misfortune. So he's pretty obnoxious, kind of like Olaf. It's very difficult to balance this champion because he's so oppressive in the early game, especially in bot lane with an aggressive ADC. I really don't think he's that bad in like the jungle and top. Maybe there's some matchups where he's really annoying, but he is very frustrating too because he's a global ult champ, so he like dominates early in some matchups, and then just with that ultimate, it just creates so much fear, and you just have to play so safe later on. So I'm not sad to see him go if he gets nerfed out of the meta, but I don't know. Okay, Rammus is getting nerfed. This is weird. This is for like silver or bronze or something. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of counterplay to Rammus. You like never see him in pro. Maybe in higher elo sometimes, but it feels like there are a lot of things that can stop his power ball or peel it. I mean, he is like good into other melee physical damage dealers, obviously. He does have good ganks early. I didn't even think his win rate was that crazy. There he is. He's like 50. Okay, I mean, he's like 55, I guess. Fiddle, Ivern, Udyr, Olaf, all these are like 55, 56. Elise. Skarner. I don't know. Sure. Once again, I'm not too sad if he's gone. Anivia, thank God, this champ, like, she's so annoying to go against. She just makes it really hard to run around her with all of the slows, the walls. She does so much damage later on, and she has such extreme wave clear that she can just stall out games. It's very hard to siege her. Even with baroned up minions, sometimes it's not enough to get through her, so she is kind of hard to play. I mean, she's an interesting champ to some extent, but I think her numbers are just a little too high. You don't see her like very much in pro, but in solo queue, she's been a terror for several patches. So I think bringing her down a little bit is fine. Elise, really high win rate, just a ton of burst damage. They can probably just shave a little bit off of her early game, and that'd probably be all right. But she just does so much damage. She can just one-shot you off of one item. So I like that change. Ivern, as much as I love Ivern, I love playing him in the jungle. You know, he has had a high win rate. Now, I think he's really hard to play. I think he's interesting in the meta. Now, keep in mind they are nerfing Staff of Flowing Water a little bit, but not that much. So it would still be good on him. Moonstone would still be good on him. So I guess he's just really oppressive in the right type of meta where you have a tank bottom and like an Ivern jungle. I could see him being really strong, but sure. They did give him like some pretty nutty buffs a few patches ago. Like his shield was like a 0.9 AP ratio or something crazy. So, okay, fine. Seraphine definitely needs a nerf. She's like super strong. She's being flexed to 3 different roles right now. Mid lane, support, and even AD carry being played as Seraphine right now. So when you're getting played in 3 different roles and you have like a 55% win rate in all of those roles, something's got to happen. So they are nerfing Staff a little bit, but they'll nerf her directly. Not sure exactly what they should do. Their AP ratios already aren't that great. They could just do some base stat stuff, like nerf her, you know, base mana, base health, base armor, something like that. Maybe her W, like movement speed or something. I'm not really sure what you would nerf about her, but I think tapping her a little bit is probably fine. Udyr, I think, is fine. I don't know. I mean, he has been seeing some pro play. I don't know what his win rate in pro is. It's probably not that great. But if you start to see Udyr played in pro, like, he's too strong. Because, you know, historically, he's just really bad at team fights, and he's just not the kind of thing. He's so one-dimensional, and he's just not the kind of thing that you see in pro games most of the time. So he's just a stat check champion, it feels like, most of the time. And I guess his stats are too high. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, Phoenix is pretty strong right now. I think Tiger's still pretty good. Looks like most people are still going Tiger on him. They did just buff Chemtech. Maybe that was too strong. Chemtech, Lichbane. But, I mean, something's going on here if you look at, like, his win rate and pick rate just, like, skyrocketing. These last couple of patches and the bans. So, okay, I'm not sure. I guess they just could nerf Tiger Strike. Just like the damage on him or something. I'm not really sure. But, okay. Talia, too strong, especially in pro. They could nerf. They did buff her jungle wave clear with her Q. That's what brought her back into the meta. So they could just revert that and take away the monster damage. I mean, that would completely gut her where no one plays her. I think she's an interesting champ to have in the jungle. She is very oppressive. When she gets ahead, like, it's definitely a comp check. Like, you better have something that can dive her and get on her, or you're going to lose, pretty much, if she gets fed. And she's pretty good against divers, too. So, but I think she's interesting in the meta. So what would I do? I don't know. Maybe they could hit her passive, her little rock thing where she gets extra movement speed. They could nerf some of her AP ratios a little bit if they wanted to. It just depends. If they really want to knock her out of the jungle, they could just remove the Q buff to monsters. But I think keeping her in the jungle is interesting because she's really not seeing play at all in mid. But okay. Sure. Okay, champion buffs, Karma. Karma seems like she should be someone that's good. You know, like, she kind of fits the mold of what's going on right now. Like, she's got really good aggression in the early game. Kill threat, poke, wave clear to get priority. She has, you know, AoE buffs with the shield to give everyone your Staff of Flowing Water buff. Although, remember, you can do that very easily just with Font of Life anyways. Seems like her Empowered Shield would synergize, like, super well with something like Locket. Although she's probably going to go Moonstone most of the time. They did buff her shield significantly. I think they brought it up to, like, 240. Maybe from 190. Maybe it wasn't that much. Maybe it was a 220. But her win rate is still just... Last time I looked, it's just terrible. And it doesn't make a ton of sense. Yeah, it's like 48%. because so many champions are so high right now. Like, it's actually bottom of the barrel as far as like mainstream supports. I guess Set's a little bit lower, Kinch is a little bit lower. Then you have kind of the meme picks, but I mean it's pretty bad. Actually, that's not by win rate. Let me see. It's 80. Okay, that's by win rate, so it's not that much better, right? When you have stuff like Heimerdinger support and, you know, Vagar support and stuff like that over like someone who should be a, you know, a staple support, then there's just something wrong with those numbers. So I like that they're giving her some attention. She's an interesting champ. They do have to historically be very, very careful buffing Karma though and Lulu, because they'll get played in top lane and sometimes in mid lane. So that's why it's just really hard to have a meta where Karma is actually decent in the bot lane, because she just gets poached by other lanes more so than like pretty much any other enchanter. Karma's going to be played in top or mid if she's good. The only other one that I think has even come close historically, in pro at least, is Lulu. So that's why Lulu and Karma usually get suppressed pretty hard in support. It's because they try to keep them out of the solo lanes, because enchanters and solo lanes are just not good. You really don't want to see it, because then that means they either have to nerf that champion or they have to nerf the items, because you do not want champions that are not supports getting support items. I talk about this all the time, because they're too cheap. Like, the support items are designed for a support economy where you're not getting farm. And so this is, if you're a support player, you should not like it at all that LS is pushing Moonstone and Staff of Flowing Water on everybody. He's saying all the top laners need to get it, all the junglers need to get it, all this stuff. It sounds fun. It sounds funny. What's going to happen is they're going to nerf the hell out of Moonstone or Staff of Flowing Water if this happens. And people keep memeing about it. And there, you know, there's just this huge movement for it. Then Riot's going to nerf it, because you do not want those cheap items that are super efficient to be in solo lanes, right? See what happened with, you know, Janna and Sona and Soraka, in that it lasted like 1 or 2 patches last year, and then those champs got hard nerfed and freaking disappeared for the rest of the season because people started playing them top lane. And you got Frostfang nerfed, and you got, I don't remember what else was nerfed in there, but there were just a couple of other like support items nerfed. So it's really bad if you're a support player. You don't want to see that. So I am a little worried about Karma getting nerfed. Like, I think she needs some love in bot lane, but it's how do you do that without buffing her solo lane? One way you could do it is maybe with the shield, like the base shield or the plus healing and shielding. So I don't know. They have to be very careful with her. Do not buff her Q. I guess you could only buff her shield. Maybe you could lower the cooldown on her ult or something like that. But anyways, interesting, but be careful. Okay, Sylas. I think Sylas in general is a very interesting champ. I like it when he's in the meta. There's just like so many different combinations you can use with him, and it creates like real impacts on like champion draft and champion diversity. When you're looking at like pro play. So for instance, if Sylas gets good again, you might see something like Corki being picked against him in the mid lane just because Corki doesn't have an ult that Sylas wants to steal, and just like weird little things like that. So Sylas being in an ecosystem, hey, thanks for the sub, I appreciate it, is actually pretty good, because he starts to get people to think about champions in different ways where you may not necessarily want to, you know, pick a whole bunch of really powerful ults. And so, like I said, Corki could rise up a little bit if Sylas comes back, or, you know, maybe some other supports or junglers that don't have great ultimates. So I think he's a really interesting way that changes how the game gets played, especially at a really high level. So I like that. Bring him back up. You don't want it to be too suppressive, but having him around I think is nice. Singe, again, kind of a weird champion. Not as much as Sylas, but, you know, can create a lot of macro pressure on the map. Pretty good against tanks. He's kind of an interesting champ. He's very unique in how he operates. So I wouldn't mind giving him a buff. I think that's okay, probably. Even though I'm probably going to regret that and hate playing against him if he's too strong. He is very, very annoying, but he has a very unique playstyle that I think is cool if it's like an option. Riven, great champ. I like Riven overall. Super high skill cap, fun to watch. You know, decent counterplay to her kit. Pretty bad right now, especially that they're nerfing the Gore drinker, which I think is what she was getting. So anyways, okay, I'm in favor of that. Jinx, kind of interesting champ. She's been, falling by the wayside. I hope they buff, like, if they wanted to buff something about her, what would it be? Maybe the cooldown on her Q or something. Just, like, give her a little bit more lane stuff, but not too much extra power. I hope they don't just, like, buff her rockets or something like that. Because she's already super strong later. She just needs a little bit of extra, like, protection or some kind of mobility or something like that. But anyway, so they could, maybe change something about chompers, lower the cooldown on chompers so she has a little bit more, like, uptime on her peel, increase the slow on her Q, increase her movement speed on her passive, just something like that to help her with self-peel and mobility. Ezreal, as much as I hate having him on my team most of the time, he is an interesting champ. He is fun, to watch in pro. Very high skill cap. And he did get hit really hard with the Manamune nerfs a couple of patches ago. So I'm not sure what they would buff about him. But I kind of hope that they bring back like an AP option. I always thought that was kind of cool to have that on the table. And I think they just kind of removed that. So just having like AD or AP being a lot more viable to increase the AP ratio on his Q a little bit, I think it's kind of cool, right? Kai'Sa gets all sorts of weird items, or she has the option of getting like Hourglass or Nashers or whatever and doing some AP damage, so it'd be cool if Ezreal had something like that as well. Okay, Mordekaiser, I don't know why he gets picked or why he's good or not good. He is sort of a really oppressive champion. He forces everyone to get a Quicksilver Sash, so he is unique, but it's kind of potentially in a negative sense. I don't know. I don't know enough about him to figure out. They probably want to buff him a little bit because he's already not doing well, and they're nerfing his the Omnivamp item. Blanking out on the name. That's probably the same thing with Vlad. Like, they're nerfing the Omnivamp item, which actually he gets Proto Belt on Vlad most of the time, but Proto Belt was nerfed last patch. So Mordekaiser, I'm okay with that, I guess. He is, like I said, kind of a unique threat in the top lane, a tanky AP bruiser with a really good utility ultimate. Vladimir, I like playing Vlad if I play him. I like vampires or hemomancers or whatever the hell he's classified as. But he is really oppressive and like really dangerous to buff when he's good. And I've seen some very good Vladimirs over time, and maybe that's just like the exception rather than the rule. I don't know what his win rate is, but I feel like he doesn't need that much help. He's at 51%. Like, it's not that bad. So I would tread carefully with that, but I don't know what they would buff on him. I don't think they can buff his damage. Maybe lower the cooldown on his pool by 1 second or something. Just something really minor. And then Shyvana. Shyvana's pretty terrible. I like Shyvana. It'll be interesting to see if they want to push her in the AP Shyvana direction or if they want to push her in the Bruiser Shyvana. I think Bruiser Shyvana is very difficult to make work. Just because she doesn't have a lot of gap closers. I mean, she has her ult, but if they gave her like some slow resistance or something, maybe they're not going to do something this extreme probably. I think they're going to rework her at some point, but if they like, when she's in dragon form, she gets tenacity or something like that, that would be very, very nice. If she gets like slow resist and tenacity. In dragon form, she gets 30-30, slow resist and tenacity. So not like full on Olaf where you can just run through everything, but very heavily resistant to that type of stuff so that you can't kite her as well. Or they could just give her some buffs to AP and just let her hang out in the back and chuck fireballs. They could lower the cooldown on her E by like 1 second, just so she throws more fireballs. It'll be interesting. That's the more unique build. The power farming, melee, semi-tanky champ that also turns into a long-range AP nuke, I think is a very interesting champion and playstyle, although it's probably kind of toxic. But anyways, she hasn't had a good time in the preseason. So that'd be interesting if they change that around. And then champion adjustments to Rel. I'm not sure what they're going to adjust about Rel. I feel like she's good sometimes. She's good. I think she's fair. I don't know. I mean, what are they going to change about her? I don't know. We'll just have to see on that. I'm not really sure because I feel like she's not that far out of line. She's good in like some situations. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to stay tuned in the next couple of days when they bring out like the specifics about the champions. I'll make another video about it. And then, of course, when the official patch notes come out next week, I'll have all the details, talk about the impact on the meta, and then I'll have fresh tier lists for you as well. But anyways, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.